The Vindaloo, it's not just a macho dish, it's actually a dish that's full of flavour, and it's not just for a late Friday night meal after you've had loads of lager down at the pub. It's full of history, it's got lots of culture that comes behind it because it originated as a pork stew dish, traditionally cooked with pork and potatoes and wine, but that wine then turned into vinegar. So I'm going to show you how to put the dish together. It's got lots of aromatics to it with lots of different spices. So the first thing we need to do is make up a spice paste. Typical of the South Indian sort of region, we're going to put together a spice paste that we'll fry off later. So to start off, we're going to put in 2 teaspoons of coriander seeds. And coriander seeds will add a real sort of zing, almost like a lemony zing to the spice paste. The next thing I'm going to put in is some cumin seeds, and that's really for a little bit of earthiness. A typical South Indian spice is the mustard seed, which gives a nose tingling, you know what I mean, tingle if you like. The next thing I'll be using is some cloves, so I'll probably use about 4 of those. So I'm going to pop 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to put in, which is probably the most important part of the dish, it's the Kashmiri chilli. So I'll be using 4 of these dried chillies. I'm just going to take the stem off and just break that up and put it in. Now, in this country, a vindaloo is known to be one of those dishes that just blows your head off. And because we're using these spices, it will be fairly fiery, but it's not really about so much chili that it blows your head off. It's really more about the fragrance and the aromatics that you get from all the ingredients that come together. So put in 4 of those, and then I'm going to put in just the final one, which is a teaspoon of black peppercorns. Just a little bit more. And what I'm going to do is blitz that up to get a really nice fine powder. And that's what you're looking for, a really nice sort of fine powder. So I'm going to just pop that to the side, and then the next thing I'm going to do is make up the wet marinade, if you like, or the wet blend. And I'm going to do that with some onions, garlic, and some ginger, and then I'm going to add the spices into that and blitz that all up together. So just roughly chop about 3 onions. You don't have to be precise about it because we're blending them all up together. So I'm going to start off with 2, and then I'll put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cloves of garlic, a nice big chunk of ginger, fresh root ginger, again roughly chopped, and just put straight into the blender. I never really skin it or anything because when you're blitzing stuff up, you don't really need to worry about that. So I'm going to add my spices in. So this is what your spice powder should look like. Really fine, but it's got that lovely red colour, and that's what's going to come through in the final dish when you've got that lovely red. And that all comes from the Kashmiri chilies. So pop that into there again, and that. So once all my ingredients are in here, I'm going to then start to add the vinegar and a little bit of water to make up a fairly wet paste that I'll be using to marinate the pork with. So I'm going to give that a blitz now. This will need a few sort of whizzes, if you know what I mean, but make sure you push all the ingredients back down. Now you can see that it will be a fairly dry paste at this point, which is why you need a little bit of liquid in there. So I've got some water, just a little bit, and then almost the iconic flavour of this dish, which is the vinegar. So I'm just using a white vinegar, and I would use about 3 tablespoons worth of vinegar. And it's really important, that vinegar in this dish. And that's in the vindaloos that I've had in restaurants, you don't really get that vinegar coming through. So it's really an important part of this dish. Okay, that's looking done to me. It looks great and it smells really lovely too. So I'm just going to get my pork because we're going to marinate the pork in the blend. So I'll just take that out. But you can see it's a beautiful, almost like an orangey red colour. So I'll just get my pork. Put that over there. So I've got some lovely pork here. For me, this dish is really about bringing lots of culture together. As I said, it's a Portuguese stew dish, or originated as Portuguese stew dish. And it comes from when the Portuguese came to Goa. And with them, they brought beautiful red chillies. With them, they brought wine. And this dish really is a combination of wine and vinegar and potato. So the name, the Vindaloo, vin comes from wine, which over the years turned into Indians using vinegar rather than wine. And loo comes from the word aloo, which is potato in Hindi. So the dish is a combination of potatoes and the vinegar, which gives it that lovely unique flavour, but also they use pork. And the reason they use pork is because the Portuguese, when they came over, were obviously Christian. So it's quite a unique part of India in that it's one of the only, or one of the smallest regions that you get pork on the menu. And this isn't the kind of dish, or cooked in this way, this isn't the kind of dish that you get in curry houses in this country. So hopefully what you'll get is quite a unique flavour from this dish, and it'll be something that you learn to love. So I've marinated the pork with probably about 2 tablespoons of that spice blend. I'm keeping the rest of it because that's what we're going to use to make our sauce. I'm also going to put in half a teaspoon of turmeric and a teaspoon of salt just for seasoning. And I'm going to leave this to marinate for probably about half an hour or so. But give that a good mix and just make sure that all the meat is coated. This style of cooking also is very unique to the south of India because it's all about spice blends in the south of India. Up in the north, it's those thick, rich, deep sauces. Down in the south, it's all about making the spice blends and then making a gravy with either coconut or curd or so on. So once that's marinated, I'm just going to pop that to the side and leave that for about half an hour, and then we're going to come back and start the sauce. Moving on to the sauce, I'm going to heat up my oil. My pan's already on the stove. Probably about a tablespoon, just under a tablespoon of oil. I don't want too much oil, and I just tend to use a vegetable oil, usually rapeseed oil. Once the oil's heated, the first thing I'm going to do is put in a teaspoon of mustard seeds. And mustard seeds are very much a South Indian flavour, and they give that nose-tingling pungency. So I'm just going to pop those in. As soon as they start to pop and sizzle, you know that they're ready, and they've started to release their natural oils. Once we've got those sizzling away, the next thing I'm going to do is put the remainder of the spice paste into the pan, and we're going to start to cook that because you've got a lot of raw flavours in there. You've got a lot of, you've got the onions, the garlic, the ginger, everything's raw in there. And this style of cooking is very, very iconic of the south of India. So making up those spice pastes and frying the spice paste off to get all of the aromatics through is a typical sort of South Indian style of cooking. So I can hear them, they're starting to pop. Into that, I'm just going to start to put my spice paste. Now, when you do this, a word of warning, just be careful because of all of those raw flavours, the chillies and everything, it can catch the back of your throat, it'll make you cry. So I'm going to fry that off probably for about 5 or 6 minutes just to make sure that all of the rawness has been cooked through. There we go. Just turn it down slightly. I can smell the mustard seeds and the aromatics of the mustard seeds coming through as well. You can see that lovely colour, and this dish will have that lovely vibrant red colour about it, and that comes from those Kashmiri chillies. as soon as it starts to get the heat, you'll get the aromatics coming through. So just cook it through until it becomes really nice and shiny. There we go. So I'm going to leave that to cook for a couple of minutes. I'm going to keep an eye on it and stir it, but I'm just going to go and get the pork that's been marinating and get that ready to pop in. Okay, so the pork is looking beautiful, really lovely and vibrant in colour. My paste, you can see, has started to dry off a little bit, so I know it's ready. It's also becoming really pungent, so I can feel it in my eyes, I can feel it at the back of my throat, so I know that that's pretty much ready. So before I add the pork, I'm going to put a teaspoon of sugar in, and again, this is very much a South Indian thing to add a little bit of sweetness to your savoury dishes. So give that a stir through, and then I'm going to go straight in with my pork, and I'm going to stir fry that for just a couple of minutes, just to almost seal the meat and get all of those flavours all running through the meat really nice and strongly. Just stir that through. Because you're putting in some raw marinade again, we just need to make sure that we stir fry this for a good few minutes. So I'm just going to turn that up, and I'm going to stir fry that just for a couple of minutes, just sealing that meat, sealing all of those lovely flavours into it before I add the potatoes, which is obviously the next key ingredient in this dish. So the meat's all looking really good, and it's looking like it's sealed nicely. So I'm going to pop in my potatoes, and I've chopped up the potatoes to the same size as the pork, all the same size, so that they all cook at the same time and cook evenly. So I'm going to pop those in and just coat all of the potatoes as well with that lovely sauce. And it's looking fairly dry at the moment, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it right down to the lowest setting. I'm going to pop the lid on the pan, and I'm going to leave that to cook in total for about 40 minutes or so, but I'm going to keep an eye on it because it can have a tendency maybe just to stick, but a lot of the juice and the gravy should come from the meat itself. So if it does feel like it's a little bit dry, then by all means just pop in a little touch of water every now and again. So we'll keep an eye on that, and we're just going to leave that to cook. It's been cooking now for about 10 minutes, so I'm just going to have a look at it and give it a stir. There we go, it's looking good. It smells really good as well. I haven't added any liquid to this at all, and nothing's sticking. The potatoes aren't sticking. All the juice is coming from the gravy. So I'm going to just pop the lid back on and leave that to cook now for another 20-25 minutes. But as I said, just give it a stir every now and again. I've got the rice on. I've had a sneaky peek, and I'm pretty sure this is ready as well. So I'm going to have a little taste. Not that I have had a taste before, but yeah, the potatoes are looking lovely. Always check for seasoning. That for me is lovely. It's got a real kick to it. It's got a nice warmth, but then that dissipates and you're ready for your next mouthful. So I'm going to dish that up. The potatoes are really soft and the meat is looking really tender, but you can see that it's a nice sort of dry dish where all the sauce is clinging to the meat. And there you have it, with a little bit of coriander on top. There's my traditional pork vindaloo.